But my name is Gina Brown, and I founded, and I'm a co-executive director of Let Us Learn, and we're small, I like to say spunky nonprofit here in Floyd County. We've done most of our work here just because there are 5 of us on the board and everybody's volunteer and we all have other jobs, and so we haven't been able to venture out like to Clark County or Harrison County or across the river. We really appreciate you all coming here because we know that awareness in the community is going to help build us, and build what we're doing in the community. And it's, experts like the Ashbys that are going to help hopefully build with, they're going to be back here with seedlings next month. And that class isn't free, but it's only $10. Like I said, all that goes right back to what we do.
Well, I'm James Ashby, my wife and I, Kendra, and these are 2 of our daughters, Kayla and Jordan. We have 5 daughters altogether. 3 of them are grown and making nests of their own nest. We started out just gardening a little bit, and then we sort of got obsessed with growing our own food. So our property in town, we're on Silver Street. Some of you may have seen it in the summer. We have sunflowers taller than the house. I mean, we grow in every inch of the place that we can. But in September last year, we bought a place out on Bud Road, about 5 minutes from here. We're going to do what's called market farming, market gardening. We're going to start selling at the market to local restaurants and places like that. It's very intensive, bio-intensive farming. Everything's really close spacing. What you want to do, what we're trying to do is grow what you would grow on 10 acres on 2 acres. It's a 4-acre place, but we're only going to grow on 2 acres. And bio-intensive methods come from French farmers, Cuban farmers. When Russia left Cuba back in the 90s, they took all of the fossil fuels. So Cuba had to learn how to grow grow food, or their whole country was going to starve to death. So they developed this system of permanent raised beds to grow, and they're 30 inches wide and just however long, 1,000 feet, whatever the distance is. But we use a lot of compost. A lot of compost is involved. We don't till the ground. We don't believe in turning over the soil and killing the life that's in it. Because soil, the life inside the soil is very important. So when you turn up that soil, it exposes it to everything that kills it. A lot of light, a lot of heat. It just kills the soil microbial life. So we're going to do just basically, you put down compost and you use what's called a broad fork to go in and sort of raise the soil, and the compost kind of slides down in there. And then once you get all that done, there's certain hand tools that will smooth out the seed beds, where you can start seeding the beds. Compost is extremely important to what we do, because we don't use any sort of chemical fertilizers or none of that stuff, because it also just kills the life in the soil. And once you kill the life in the soil, you're dependent on that chemical every year to get anything to grow over and over. That's how nature grows things. Once you start getting into nature and learning what nature does, how it all works, and spiritually it just changes you. You start looking at everything different. For me it does. I hope for everyone else it does. Compost it's pretty easy. It just takes time. A lot of people don't like to invest 6 months to a year in a good compost, but it really does. It really takes some time, but it's worth it. It helps the environment so much. Getting rid of all that waste through composting. Compost is basically just decomposed organic matter. Pretty simple. The soil has its own ecosystem. hosts a large number of microorganisms. And underneath your feet outside is a whole food web. You know, the magic that's going on in the soil is unbelievable. Soil microbiology exists in the soil specifically for the function and effects of the soil properties, serving as an excellent host for the growth and development of various organisms. Now, why it's so important is for the, you know, if you ever dug up a hole and looked at the structure of the soil that's going down in the hole, at the top of it you'll see what like cottage cheese looking little balls formed at the top of the soil, and that's what's called a soil aggregate. And what forms those aggregates are fungi and bacteria. You know, they eat all that organic matter that's on the top 2 or 3, 4 inches of the soil, and once they start pooping, that's what your plant food. One of my favorite fungi, and they made me a shirt, is mycorrhiza fungi. Mycorrhiza fungi attaches to the root systems of the plants, and it will burrow deep. Some scientists have said they've burrowed 7 or 16 miles deep to find water for a plant. You know, they attach to the roots, and they'll go search for water, and they'll go search for food for the plant, but the plant has to give up some of its sugars, because the fungi eats sugar. And you know, it's exciting. The fungi binds the soil aggregates and particles together, and once those particles are bound together, they retain water. You know, so if you got a good organic garden and you're feeding it right, and you're doing layers like you're doing the lasagna gardening, you won't have to water that very much, because those aggregates will hold water and they'll hold nutrients. You know, so you'll go a lot longer between waterings. If you have no soil life, you're going to be watering daily. You know, so the soil biology is so important. So, when we're building compost, we're creating that biology that's going to create the soil aggregates in your soil. The 10 reasons why you should compost turns your trash into treasure, because you know, instead of buying, I mean, you can, if you go buy a bag of 20 or whatever those things are called, you know, they're going to cost you whatever, $10, $15, I don't even know how much that stuff costs. But you're talking about free garbage. You're just throwing in a bin. You know, it's not really costing you, but what you initially paid, you're going to pay for anyway. You know, for a carton of eggs or whatever. So you throw those eggshells in your compost bin, it's going to turn into fertilizer. So eventually, you know, you'll start saving some money. Number 2 is, like we talked about, building the soil. Compost is the best way to build your soil. There's no better way. The United States loses about 3 to 5 tons of topsoil every year. You know, and it's going to take 60 years to get 2 inches of that back. You know, so that's devastating to our planet. Devastating. You know, I got kids, I have grandkids. I want the earth to be around for them, you know, in a few years. At the rate we're going, the way we're destroying things, who knows if they're going to have one? You know, who knows? But by doing these things, we at least say we're doing our part to increase the chances of the next 4 or 5 generations to have a good life. You know, you think back 5, 6 generations ago, they were doing things to prepare the soil. They were doing things that were not toxic, that's benefiting us now. You know, and when I talk to people about farming and gardening and soil, you know, I can talk for hours about it. And one main question I ask them, what are you doing to save the planet for 7 generations down the road? And 2 people maybe out of 7 or 8 years have an answer. takers. You're not giving nothing back. So, but I don't want to bring it down. I want you to learn how to compost. Pretty obvious that the microbial life in compost feeds your plants better than anything else. And it may not grow a kale plant as fast as a synthetic fertilizer, but when you eat a kale plant from synthetic fertilizer, you're not getting any nutrition in it. They take 3 nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and they grow a pretty plant that has no nutrient value. So a lot of your kales and things sitting on the store shelf, there's no nutrient value in them, very little, because they don't have any soil life. They're putting all these synthetic fertilizers down to make it grow and look pretty, but there's no nutrients in them, So it's nutrients is what we need. We need that in our body. We could use about 75 different nutrients, micro and macronutrient. Number 5, compost diverts water from landfills. So like I said, once the microorganisms hold on to that water, they don't let it go. They don't. You're not going to see a lot of runoff on a big organic farm. But on these big commercial farms, you're seeing tons of runoff. You're seeing it all the way down the Gulf of Mexico. These big dead zones in the Gulf now, from runoff from people north of us. That's how far it runs off. And that's dangerous. That's really dangerous for what they're doing. But money trumps good practice to them. Number 10, composting is fun. Yeah, I mean I get a kick out of watching stuff rot and turn into plant food. I get a big kick out of it. It's not if it starts smelling, your balance isn't right. So you can stick your head in a good compost. Smells nice. Smells real nice. Yeah. I think it smells great. I love it. There are studies that say that if you sniff good organic soil, it puts you in a good mood.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'm always happy.
Yeah.
Because I'm always got my hands in good soil. 4 things to make good compost: water, air, nitrogen, and carbon. All 4 of those things make good compost. And you can't have too much of any of them, or the balance won't be right. It has to be pretty good balance. So all your carbon materials tend toward woods. Leaves, tree limbs, cardboard, paper. Most anything that's made out of wood doesn't have a chemical on it become composted as a carbon. And all of your nitrogen side of it are lean toward food-based things. Apple peels, potato peels, fresh veggie scraps, eggshells. We have a pretty big list we're going to give you that really tells you a whole lot. And there's some don'ts. Don't put oil in your compost. Don't put manure from an animal that's been fed by a person, unless it's a grass-fed animal.
Thank you.
And I say that too because grain-fed animals are just as toxic as the chemicals that are going on the ground. Chicken manure is very high in nitrogen. It's so high that it burns the plants. So you want to compost it for about a year before you use it. Carbon keeps the compost fairly dry. Now you want some moisture in your compost, but you don't want it like sopping wet, stinky. It'll start to stink. Because you want good air in there. You want aerobic compost. That means the bacteria that loves air. If it's too wet and you don't have enough carbon, you're going to get an anaerobic environment, which is not good bacteria. and it's gonna start smelling. You know, basically, I take a 20-gallon tote, and I fill it up with water, and I let it set a couple days to let the chlorine evaporate out of our water. And I put 4 cups of compost in a sock, and I stick it in there, and I put 2 cups of worm castings in there, and I put about 3 tablespoons of unsulfured black molasses. Bacteria loves sugar, so they will start eating that molasses and just multiply like crazy. And I also use a fish bubbler. You know, I put a fish bubbler
I
in
remember
there
you talking about that.
and aerate it for about 3 days. And you know, I filter it, put it in a garden sprayer, spray the leaves. And what it does, it puts a real fine coating on the leaves that makes them more pest resistant. You know, bugs don't like it; they won't go chewing the leaves as much. You know, pests really like sick plants. So if you're growing healthy plants, you don't have nearly the bug pressure as you do if you're growing sick plants. So if you start seeing tons of bugs on your plants, time to up your game, your organic matter game, and get your plants healthier. Vermicomposting is compost where you add worms. There's nothing really to tell you about it. I mean, it's basically in your composting, and you throw worms in there. But what worms do, man, they are magical. Worms are amazing. They digest everything in there. They digest everything in there. And what they excrete, I've got a big thing to show you of what the worm castings look like. It passes through their digestive tract. They secrete chemicals that break down the organic matter into sustainable nutrition for the plants. Vermicompost is the #2 fertilizer, best fertilizer on the planet. The #1 is bat guano, but it's so expensive, nobody fools with it. Their composting worms are special worms that just eat, and eat. They never stop eating. I mean, they eat and lay eggs. That's basically their life. And in each egg, there's 20 more worms. So your colony will double every 90 days. So if you start out with your 500 worms, 90 days, do that for a year. And in a year, you're gonna have 200,000 worms.
They're like the rabbits.
Yeah, and you'll have to take this will be full, and you'll have to start new ones, you know, because you'll be overrun with your composting worms.
So if you did one of these compost bins that didn't have a bottom on it,
They would do fine in
you
that.
could put them in
Yeah,
there.
because then they can, you know, if it gets too uncomfortable, they can go down. They can go down deep. Yeah, I mean, you know, that's what a lot of people do. They get too many worms, they just start throwing handfuls in the garden, you know. And then, and if you're doing a no-till system, you're not tilling up the ground. Those are your tillers. They're constantly going up and down the ground to eat. And you can stick a popsicle stick in the ground, it's about this deep, and in a couple of days it'll be gone because the worms will come up and pull that right down into the ground. You know, they're amazing. They are amazing. They are the tillers. You know, they aerate your soil. You know, tilling is just to aerate the soil. There's nothing. You know, tilling. That's the main reason to till the ground. But everybody snatches the tiller out every spring because that's what they saw Grandpa doing, great Grandpa doing. That's the practice that's been taught since that technology came out. You know, jump on a tractor to till everything and kill your soil life. You know, it's like a hurricane, tornado, tsunami, everything hitting those microbes all at once, and they all die.
Layers and layers of it.
That's
They don't
really
get big
cool.
as the big
This is the
fat
bottom he
earthworm.
brought to show the worm cast.
Oh, they stay small
So
like
they stay
that.
small like
Y'all,
that.
the stack.
There's some of them that get a little bigger.
Yeah, it comes.
So you
We
put
call it
your
worm casting so it don't sound.
food in the top, or how does it work?
Well, what do you want to do to start this? Where's your first layer? We brought stuff, so we're gonna go in and get yours started tonight. So wait, we need your back. The way I do it on the photos, I just shred. So in here we have eggshells, lettuce, coffee grounds with the filter. They love laying eggs in these filters. They'll go inside there and lay their eggs. So I always put the filters in there with it. And then after a while, they eat the filters. Yeah. Spread it out. Bananas are number one. They love bananas. I think that's their favorite. There's some cabbage. See, right now we've got about, I'm gonna call it 50-50 of carbon
Okay.
and nitrogen. So we'll put a layer of carbon on top of this.
When you guys collect this stuff, you don't just put it in one tub and.
We do, we just kept it separate for this.
Yeah,
We just toss it all in.
yeah. We're making it look pretty. This stuff's fine. This peat cartons, they'll eat those just as well.
But no styrofoam?
No styrofoam. No styrofoam.
Here.
It's just my method. I tear it on the bin.
Makes it
Easy too.
I know.
They're straight, straight.
A lot of practice.
So like this, we don't want to put that in.
No, this has that enamel. So if it's shiny in the light like that, we'll go all the way to the bottom.
I see a bug. It's like a gnat.
Yeah.
So do you grow this on the inside or outside of the house?
Depending on the temperature, right now, we'll take it outside. Because we usually keep a coffee can on the counter. It's what we did for a long time. And all of our scraps, we just throw them in there. And when it was full, we would dump it in the worms. Yeah, they'll burrow their way. This is full of worms too. When I'm gonna harvest this, I have to dump it on a table. Or, if you got layers like that, when you set a new layer up there and start filling it up, they'll come up through those holes. And then once they're all up in those holes, you take that off, and you've got a whole one of these full of worm castings.
So, okay, so we're gonna put the other layers on there or just the lid on there now?
Just the lid.
Just
for
the
now,
lid.
Yeah.
And as you get going,
Yeah,
This will get full,
as
like
this
that.
one gets full, which it may take 3 or 4 months, 5,
Gotcha.
6 months, depends on, how many eggs are in here. There's a lot of eggs in here. They're little
Yeah.
bitty green, emerald
We
green
got a lot of kids.
balls. Like I said, in each egg, there's 20 worms.
Where is the egg?
I don't know. I'm just saying that they're in here. They're all over the place, but they're.
Yeah.
They would eat that in a week and a half.
wow.
Oh, but that's small amount.
That small amount, it's gonna take a while for that colony to build up. But if you wanna get stuff going right away, you spend $30 and get a pound of
Uncle
worms
who?
from Uncle Jim's
Uncle Jim.
Worm Farm. That's who I tell people to go to. They're making cheaper ones. I've had good luck. His worms come in, they're always alive. If they're not alive, you call him, he'll send you another pound. He also sells night crawlers, African night crawlers. Because these red wigglers like to eat on the top, but the African night crawlers like to eat on the bottom. So you're getting,
It's a good
everything's
mix.
getting ate
It's a
on
good
a good
mix.
balance, yeah.
Can you put them both in the same place?
Yeah.
They won't eat each other?
No, they won't
Question.
fool each other.
So, in a month, we'll feed it some more.
Yeah.
Basically, have the same thing you just did.
Mm-hmm.
Food and more paper and
Right.
more water. And then it keeps building and building. So let's assume that gets decomposed to half and then eventually gets as high as that.
Yes.
Then what do you do then?
So then that's when you take this
Yeah,
out
that's
for the
when you put a
garbage.
new level on.
So you put a
You
new
start a
level.
brand new one.
Okay.
They're gonna know there's new food, and they're gonna come up through those holes. So you
Okay,
might
so-
have holes in
And so that the bottom is what eventually you're gonna use, your compost is
Yeah.
done at the bottom.
Yeah, this layer will be done,
Just one people.
you know, and full as you wanna be, you put a new level on. You start with your carbon, your nitrogen, your carbon, wet it down. In a week, they'll all be, they'll come up through those holes to get to that new food. Once you see them not coming up no more, you check the bottom. They're not crawling and hanging out the bottom. They're all up in here. Then you take the new lid off for a minute and take your full bucket of compost off and put the new one back down.
And so we kind of brought them together and did an intergenerational garden and autumn ones, and that was
Just
really
check
cool.
for
And they're
the
still
soil
doing
life.
stuff together.
Watch the
And then